Hello and welcome to Cultural Perspectives Week 5 lecture. I'm so excited to be doing this lecture because it is obviously my area of research. My PhD was in sociology, but more specifically it was in gender and sexualities research. So my PhD was actually an ethnographic study into the lives of drag performers around Australia. And what I did was look at their relationship to culture. So it fits in really well with this unit. And what it does, what I can sort of shed light on from my experience is the different ways in which gender operates and the ways in which it is understood by people differently, but also how it's actually quite complex and really hard to understand. So gender is a very complex political term. It's also quite hard to sort of grasp when we talk about this idea that we perform gender. So we all think that we are this one person, that we're born into a gender and that we're born into sort of performing or sort of just being ourselves. But when in fact gender is a socially constructed concept. So in my research, my findings sort of help to elaborate that by looking at drag performance and the different ways in which drag kings and drag queens, kind of hyper sort of mock gender itself through their kind of performances of hyper-femininity or hyper-masculinity on the surface of a male or female body. So the gender that they're producing or performing is not kind of in line with their biological sex. So we're going to talk about these ideas about sex and gender. What is this gender binary? And what happens when it kind of is disrupted? And we're also going to look at ideas about feminism and the ways in which gender is kind of has major ramifications for people. So the different ways in which gender privileges some people over others and the disadvantages that come along with that. So we're going to look at feminism. Now, this topic is obviously, I know, a bit difficult for some people because it might shake some of the core of who you might be or who you understand yourself to be. But just like race, just like class, just like, ethnicity, those things also cause disadvantage and privilege to others. Gender works and operates in the same way. So power is operating within gender structures, and there are significant inequalities as a result of this system that our society has produced. And the reason why we have to study this is because there are right here in Australia, there are significant disadvantages even just in the workforce, and I'm going to show you some examples of that soon. So I'm going to share my screen with you now. So let's have a look at our PowerPoint for this week. So I've put here a little image of that I quite often use when I teach this topic because I really like it. It's obviously a drag performer, and we can see that on the left-hand side, it's this kind of version of himself as a woman. You know, it's hyper feminized. It's got the big makeup, the big lips, the earrings, the big hair. And on the right-hand side, we have a much more kind of masculine appearance, which is toned down. It's not about artifice or exaggeration, which is what femininity is often built on. Masculinity exists as kind of appears as being something that can't be impersonated, as being the authentic core of gender. So, we have the beard, we have the facial hair, we have the stoic look, minimal kind of facial expression, no hand movement up here. So masculinity and femininity operate in many different ways. I'm going to discuss some of that in a second, but I hope you like this lecture and let me know your thoughts on our discussion board or in our tutorial this week. So defining what sex and gender is. These two terms often get confused, but they are not the same, okay? So sex is largely based on our biological differences. So when we think about when we think about sex, it's often based on our genitalia or the reproductive differences between a male and a female. So it really is, you know, that you're either assigned a category of female or male based on your body. So it's a physical kind of distinction. Now, sex refers to biological differences, chromosomes, hormonal profiles, internal and external organs. But gender does not operate the same way. So gender is then assigned or assumed to follow on naturally from the sex category that you are given. So gender is the social role that we're expected to take on. So it describes the characteristics that society or culture delineates as being either masculine or feminine. Okay, so with our sex, we often think that it's either one or the other, when in fact this too is also quite controversial or complex. So sometimes we have people that are not born with clear sex you know, distinctions, and can sometimes actually have chromosomes of both male and female, but they can also have the genitalia, say, of ambiguous genitalia that can have elements of both. So what we call these people are intersexed, and they are people that often experience inequalities because they will be assigned a sex at birth, and sometimes as they grow up, they don't feel that they are who they really are, or living the kind of bodily experience or gendered experience that they would have liked to have had you know, people not decided that for them, or society in general. So intersex people, some theorists put it at 1 in 2,000 people are born intersex, but that number is never truly known fully because it's obviously suppressed and swept under the rug. So gender is kind of our performance or our kind of the social roles that we take on, and sex is down what is based on our bodies and the differences there, and what they could, the differences between what they can do in terms of reproduction. So we tend to think of this in terms of male and female, as in we're either biologically male or biologically female. And in terms of gender, we also tend to think of this as male and female, as in to be male is to be masculine, to be female means you have to be feminine. So the gender slippage between sex and gender. Now, I've got this image here that you can see. Let me just move myself. I'm sorry, I apologise for that. There we go. So because we often assume a natural relationship between being male and masculine and female feminine, we therefore dress and act in ways that conform with our socially constructed concepts of gender. So we can think of these as gendered norms or gender norms. So in this image here, we have a male kind of outdoors, being rough, being fearless, brave, kind of savage in a way, hairy, you know, that sort of thing. Whereas the female here is presented as being angelic or kind of quite, you know, pure, these ideas of purity, kind of beauty, looking good, makeup, hair is done, youthful, all of those sorts of ideas. So these are attached to our gendered roles. We're expected to play these out in everyday life. Now, gendered norms, just like there is no universal way of being a woman, okay, women, with femininity, there are so many types of femininity that we can produce. It can be hip hop femininity with our stilettos and our booty shaking and our ripped jeans, or it can be, you know, quite covered up and based on sort of religious influences as well. So with our culture, it intersects. So gender intersects with religion, our class, our kind of ethnicity, and these forces shape what we do and why we do it, and how we perform that gender that we are assigned or expected to perform. So, you know, religious sort of dress, we've also got suits now, whereas women can be actually presenting, I guess, female forms of masculinity in a sense, or female masculinities. And this is a term that is used by Judith Halberstam in a book that she wrote in 1998 called Female Masculinity. And I use this in my work and also her book, The Drag King Anthology. So this which was written in 1999, and they look at kind of how masculinity can be produced by women as well. So this is kind of going against those gendered stereotypes in a way, but it's also quite feminine at the same time. And Asian kind of cultures about, you know, foot binding, and obviously it's been outlawed, this idea about being petite and small rather than big and bootylicious. So ideas change, they are complex, they are fluid. About men, we've got, you know, headdresses, we've got full coverage again, we've got skirts, we've got, you know, kind of man bags and fashion and the metrosexual and these kind of ideas. So gender doesn't stay the same. You know, we think about some of the things that, you know, men or women do this day and age, and we think, you know, 10 years ago that would not have been something that people wore or did or engaged in. So think about how you yourself have changed over time. So example I've got here is hair removal. So in some cultures this is considered a norm for women, but an option for men. So why is it that men, not all men shave, but mostly women are expected to get rid of their underarm hair or their leg hair or whatever it might be? And I've got this here. So 90% of women who prefer men with less body hair, okay, but 70 hours is the amount of time that you waste every year shaving your legs. So think about how now women are going against that and kind of growing out their hair and kind of producing different forms of femininity. And even if we think about Conchita Wurst, who was the Eurovision Song Contest winner in 2014 for Austria, and she was a drag queen who even went against norms about how to be a drag queen by having a beard, but it being very feminine at the same time. So there's a kind of a clash sometimes between gendered roles. So in terms of our gender, it is often what we call policed. So society creates gendered norms, it's socially constructed, so it's not actually biologically determined or inherent or within us. We don't learn kind of what to wear or what to do from our, you know, DNA. It's kind of what society tells us to do, and we police our behaviours in accordance with those hegemonic or dominant views about gender. And as Judith Butler, who was a key theorist in this area, she wrote the book Gendered Trouble in 1990. She said that there are quite punitive consequences for those people that don't actually adhere to these norms. So if you think about sissy boys or tomboys and stuff like that, think about how that starts at school and how that is policed. So let's have a look. Hogg says, here's a little meme that you can read. This sort of leads into our discussion on femininity and how it relates, feminism and how it relates to patriarchy, and how it relates to the gender binary. So the gender binary is a structure that society creates, that men go to those toilets, women go to those toilets, or men are here, women are there, or so it starts with our sex, we're either male or female. Then we have a gender. If you're a male, you're supposed to be a man. If you're a female, you're supposed to be a woman. You're both supposed to be kind of, a man is supposed to produce masculinity, a woman femininity, and both are supposed to be heterosexual. So it's chain linked. Now, if we don't produce those norms, there are often significant problems, whether it be outcast, bullying, disadvantage, lack of relationship success, work success, family acceptance, religious acceptance, whatever it might be. So this is an image of myself that I've decided to put up, and it's quite personal for me. This is actually the first time I've done this since living as being transgendered. So this is my current self on the left a couple of weeks ago, and on the right, that was perhaps me about 1.5 years ago, maybe. So not that long, but really, obviously in my life, I'm a good example of how gender is fluid. I never expected to actually take the leap and to kind of live as my true self. And that was something that shocked myself, but I only did that because I had confidence in my work and having work security, having kind of perhaps confidence in my body, having lost weight, you know, and that's also a stereotype about femininity in terms of being thin or having to adhere to certain gendered norms. I guess in one way I'm going against norms by not producing a gender that is aligned with my biological sex or expected of me. At the same time, I produce a femininity that is perhaps also stereotyped. So once or, you know, about being thinner or about wearing makeup or about being kind of having nails or whatever it might be. So despite being quite normative in my performance of gender now, or being subversive to begin with, it's quite normative at the same once I had transitioned. So obviously transitioning as well is an ongoing process. So my gender is constantly changing now, and the way I perform my identity every day. So it's contradictory. Gender is contextual. The way I am here might be very different to the way I am going up to Woolworths or talking to my family, for example. So it is not as sort of straightforward as we think. And that's the key point I want you to take away from this experience or my lecture here. So how does this all relate to gender? So natural or biological understandings of sex have shaped beliefs about women across all historical periods. Now, there's this idea that women need to be saved by men, that women need to be looked after, women are weaker, you know, kind of not as good at certain tasks. So this has sort of shaped our ideas across time in film, in Disney, in kind of soapies and soap operas, and the way we even relate to our friends and family. Okay, so there is an assumed natural relationship between these two images, and that women need and want men, and often will put on these performances about femininity to attract a male gaze. So power is gendered. Okay, so this has resulted in an example for a widespread view that women are naturally more inclined to raising children, better at kind of being teachers or you know, nurturing, whereas men can also be just as nurturing. There are some women that perhaps don't have that inclination, that don't want children, or, you know, but think about how society kind of judges women that don't. But does society judge men the same way? Who knows? So the historical confinement of women to the private sphere to raise children and tend to the household was also justified as natural. So this leads to greater gender inequality. So Carol Pateman has argued that the dichotomy between the private and the public is central to almost 2 centuries of feminist writing and political struggle, and it is ultimately what the feminist movement is about. Okay, so it's about kind of getting away from these ideas so that women and men and all gendered, you know, people that are gendered in different ways can just experience equality based not on gender, but on their performance and who they are, you know, kind of who they are as people, not as a gendered subject. So introduction to feminism, I hope that you enjoy, but let's have a look. So to begin with, I wanted to have a look at a government report, okay, that is from the Australian government. Sorry, let me just move my screen. It's a bit stuck. There we go. So it's from the Australian Government Gender Equity Insights 2017, and it's inside Australia's gender pay gap. And this is a finding that I wanted to show you, and it says currently available evidence on gender pay gaps in Australian workplaces paints a worrying picture that indicates major policy challenges for the present and the future. Among full-time workers, women earn 84% of a man's pay on average, resulting in full-time gender pay gap of 16%. But this is a point in time snapshot of a picture that has endured for decades. 20 years ago, the full-time gender pay gap was 17%, with women earning on average 83% of a man's pay. So in 20 years, we have come along 1%. I've put the link down the bottom for you there to have a look at. But the report shows many insights and good findings about even, you know, people being, graduates from university, men in top ranked sort of trainee jobs, internships will earn $88,000 a year, and women $80,000. So there is a 2.8% difference. So think about what this does for kind of women. There has been a reduction in the report that suggests that higher up and CEOs and kind of executives, this gap has lessened, but it has only, again, come down a short way as well. So it's a very slow process, and obviously there are improvements, but the need for feminism is still here. And feminists are not just women. Feminists can be anybody that cares about gender equality. So first wave feminism occurred roughly between 1790s and 1930s, and was associated with this push for the right to vote. That was really what it was all about the right to vote. But this movement didn't include all women either. So it included largely women of upper class, of white, Caucasian background. So think about how women of colour were excluded, and how even within gendered circles or ideas, people are discriminated against as well. Think about Mary Wollstonecraft and the Vindication of the Rights of Women, which was written in 1792. And she said that my main argument is built on this simple principle that if a woman be not prepared by education to become the companion of a man, she will stop the progress of knowledge and virtue. For truth must be common to all, or it will be ineffectuous, counterproductive with respect to its influence on general practice. So think about how knowledge and power relate. And knowledge perhaps gives the ability for people to kind of get work, get education, get kind of cultural capital, to go up the ladder, to actually want to work and not think that their lives are limited to a domestic sphere. Often women undertake paid work often full-time jobs, but also have to work at home, doing the washing and laundering, cleaning, and doing work that is unpaid. So work is not always about paid. It can often be unpaid and unrecognised. So first wave feminism obviously was white middle class women. It was in Britain largely where it began, and South Africa as well, sort of got the vote in 1930 and stuff like that. You remember the apartheid and stuff in South Africa and the limitations there. So first wave feminism in New Zealand as well, they were granted the right to vote in 1893. Not surprising, Australia came after in 1902. Perhaps also gay marriage we will get soon, or same-sex marriage, which will also be behind New Zealand. So I wonder why. Something to think about. Let me just explain, sorry. I think it's a bit stuffed. There we go. So women started to believe in second wave feminism. It's about the 1960s, and this movement became known as women's liberation movement. So the second wave asserted that male and female relations were political, not natural, and they politically interrogated sexuality. So it was largely about employment, getting education, child rearing, domestic violence being, and rape culture being reduced, trying to get rid of oppression, equal opportunity, get rid of disadvantage, and kind of let people into certain aspects of culture and cultural life, and to show that women were just as capable. Even if you think back to the United Kingdom, and when Margaret Thatcher became the first female prime minister, she experienced a lot of challenges, just like even recently with Julia Gillard. A lot of her problems in government were linked to gendered discourse about her being a bitch, witch, childless, and things like that, rather than on her policy and performance. So it is still happening today, but second wave feminism was there, and from the 1990s, third wave feminism came along. So some feminists have argued that feminism needs to be more inclusive of women of different classes, ethnicities, and sexualities. And this third wave feminism is based on acceptance that feminism itself is characterized by diversity, fragmentation, and a series of internal contestations. If you look at the work of Germaine Greer, who wrote The Female Eunuch, Germaine Greer is not a fan of transgendered women and believes that transgender women are not real women and cannot participate in feminist movements because we don't know exactly what it's like. Well, having been on both sides of the gender divide, I can say that gender inequality does exist. I too thought it was perhaps a myth that women, you know, oh, they'll be okay, or it's not so bad. When I never expected when I was going to transition that I would lose a lot of power. But I gained a lot of things, but I also lost a lot of things. Men now talk over me a lot more. It's harder for me to get a word in some official places. It's harder for me, say, in a classroom to make kind of male students or female students perhaps listen more, or to stop chattering or whatever it might be. Or now I walk down the street and I go to a nightclub and I don't enjoy the privilege of not being grabbed or groped or followed or whatever it might be, or stalked even, cars on campus or whatever it might be, or just a whistle down the street. That never happened to me before, and that is a male privilege, you know. So even though men are not, you may not be sexist or hate women, and you may view women and everyone as being equal in terms of gender, men are still beneficiaries of the system of patriarchy. And patriarchy means the rule of the father. And what it does is it kind of bases this idea that men are kind of stronger than women, kind of more dominant than women, and often therefore, as a result of these views, hold positions in government, in politics, in higher echelons of blue collar, the workforce. There are a lot more male CEOs than females. If you look at recently Tony Abbott's government, first cabinet had 19 men and 1 woman, Julie Bishop, which was the foreign minister. That is not a coincidence. That happens because of male privilege and being able to do that and get away with that. Our parliament, I think, is, in this country, there are actually more women than men, but our government is, I think, less than 1/3 of women of the seats. So think about kind of, in a sense, I miss that privilege, but it's my job to tell people about my experience from both sides, so I can say in my heart and from what I've seen and from what a lot of transgender people have seen who have lived both lives, that this is real, that we have to be careful now about walking down the street. We can't, do some of the things that we used to do. I can't sit on a train and not be, harassed by a guy or whatever it might be, or asked about, whatever personal details I want to know. I mean, I know that this doesn't happen all the time. I'm very privileged. I'm very lucky in my life to be able to talk about this and to be able to talk about transgender people and through my eyes and do this through my work. So I recognize that. But I'm still going to talk about the issues that I see. And these are issues that a lot of people face, a lot of women face, and think about women that don't have the ability to speak back, that are perhaps scared, or that are perhaps, unable to. So although men obviously experience disadvantage as well, on the large, as I said, men are beneficiaries of this system of patriarchy, despite not wanting to be. And the evidence is there for you to have a look at. So, just like first wave feminism, third wave feminism is still heavily criticised. This idea about, encourages women to leave their husbands or kill their children, or witches or lesbians. This idea that white feminists hate men. This idea is from Milo Yiannopoulos, who is a quite controversial conservative commentator, social media commentator, who says that feminism is cancer. So it's cancer because it's cancer to the male cause. That's why it's cancer to him. It's not cancer to us. So let's think about this for you. What does feminism mean to you? You can be a feminist. Feminism is not just for women. So I thank you for listening to my lecture on gender, and I hope that you have some better understanding of what sex means, what gender is, what this gender binary is, what social constructionism is, how gender is complex, fluid, political. I know it's a lot to take in, but that's why we do this course. That's why I'm here. And if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me, and we can have a really good discussion about it. And hopefully we can nut out some of these ideas that cause these kind of confusions about who we are and what we have to do and why we do things. Because if we don't bother studying them, things don't change, hey? So thank you so much. I'm Dr. Evvie Smith. This is for Cultural Perspectives Online, Western Sydney University, the college, 2017. Thank you. See you next time.